Chapter 6. The End is Here. Jack threw open the door to the room of scrolls. He and Annie rushed in and ran over to the shelves. Jack pulled out the piece of paper with the Latin title on it, Vir fortissimus in mundo. "Okay," he said. "We have to find the scroll with this title." They began frantically unscrolling scrolls. One by one, they were all handwritten in Latin. "Here it is," said Annie. She held up a scroll. The words at the top matched the one on their paper. "Yay!" said Jack. "I wish I could read Latin so we could find out what the story is." "Don't think about it now," said Annie. "Let's go." Annie handed the scroll to Jack, then started out of the room. "Come on," she said. "Bring it." "I just want to check and see what the story's about," said Jack. He put the scroll in the leather bag, then he flipped through the book on Roman times, looking for a picture of the ancient scroll. In the middle of the book, he found a picture of a volcano erupting over a town. Under the picture was written, "For 800 years, Mount Vesuvius was a peaceful mountain, rising above the town in Pompeii. Then, at noon on August 24th, AD 79, it erupted into a deadly volcano." "Oh no," whispered Jack. "August 24th, AD 79. That's today." "Oh man, what time is it?" He looked around wildly. "Annie!" She was gone. "Annie!" Jack grabbed the leather bag, then clutching the book, he tore out of the scroll room. "Annie!" "What?" Annie peered at the door to the dining room. The volcano!" stuttered Jack. "What?" said Annie. It's coming! A volcano at noon!" said Jack. Annie gasped. "What time is it?" cried Jack. "So that's what the soothsayer meant. The end is near." "What time is it?" Jack asked again. He looked around the garden. He saw something near the mermaid fountain. A sundial. "That's how the Romans told time." Jack and Annie raced to the sundial. "What time does it say?" said Annie. "I don't know," said Jack. His hands shook as he turned the pages of the book. He stopped on a picture of a sundial. It showed examples of different times. Jack looked back and forth from the page to the real sundial in the garden. "Here," he said. He had found the one that matched. Jack read the writing under the picture. "The shadow on the sundial can hardly be seen at noon." "Oh man," he whispered. He looked at Andy. "The end isn't near. The end is here." Then he heard a terrible blast. It was the loudest sound he had ever heard. Chapter 7. The Sky is Falling. The next thing Jack knew, he was lying on the stone patio. The patio stones were trembling. A rumbling sound came from the ground. Jack raised his head. Annie was on the ground too. "You okay?" said Annie. Jack nodded. Everything was shaking and crashing down around them. Pots, plants, and the mermaid fountain. Water from the goldfish pond sloshed onto the patio and Jack and Annie. They both jumped up just as roof tiles began falling into the garden. "We better get inside," said Jack. He grabbed his leather bag. Then he and Annie stumbled into the scroll library. Giant cracks split the stone floor as Jack and Annie ran to a window and looked out. Glowing rocks were bursting through the sky above Mount Vesuvius. The whole top of the mountain had blown off. "What's happening?" said Annie. "I'll check," said Jack. He pulled out the Roman book. He read aloud from the section about the volcano. "When a volcano erupts, hot melted rock called magma is pushed to the surface of the earth. Once it gets outside the volcano, it's called lava." "Lava! That's like burning mud," said Jack. "It covers everything," cried Annie. Jack kept reading. "There was no running from lava from Mount Vesuvius. The magma from the volcano cooled so fast that it froze into small grayish-white rocks called pumice. A pumice rock is very light and has holes like a sponge." "That doesn't sound too bad," said Annie. "Wait, there's more," said Jack. He read on. A great cloud of pumice, ash, and burning rock shot miles into the air. When it rained down on Pompeii, it completely buried the town. "Oh man," said Jack. "This is a major disaster." "It's getting dark," said Annie. Jack looked out again. A thick black cloud was spreading over the earth like an umbrella. The sun had vanished as the sky turned smoky gray. "That must be the cloud of pumice and ash," said Jack. Just then the ground trembled again. Chunks of plaster from the ceiling fell on the scrolls. "We have to get out of here," said Annie. They ran from the scroll library into the garden. Ash and pumice began to fall. "We have to cover our heads," said Jack. They hurried from the garden into the dining room. "Look, pillows! Let's put them on our heads." They hurried to the couches beside the table and each grabbed a pillow. "Tie it around your head with your belt," said Jack. They both pulled off the belts from around their tunics and tied on the pillows like giant hats. A chunk of ceiling crashed down near them. "Let's get out of here," said Jack. They stepped over pieces of fallen roof tiles and ran into the main hall. They pushed open the front door. A blast of heat and dust nearly knocked them over. When they stepped outside, pumice rained down on their pillow hats. "Run!" cried Annie. They ran from the vacation villa into the dark, burning streets. Chapter 8. Nightmare at Noon. In the distance, fire burst from Mount Vesuvius. Burning rocks and fiery ash fell from the sky. The hot, dusty air smelled like rotten eggs as Jack and Annie rushed down the street. In the Forum, everyone, shoppers, soldiers, gladiators, fruit sellers, was running in every direction. Stalls had collapsed. Carts were sliding. Jack froze. He didn't know where to go.